Thanks for watching Slice of SciFi. I'm Noah Richmond,
And I'm Lewis Howley.
discussing the movie Monkey Man. Dev Patel both wrote, directed, and starred in this film. It's frequently being compared to the Western John Wick series. I've prior to going in, I think we both heard it described as being an Indian John Wick, and even the film early on even has a direct nod to that movie, and so it is pretty straightforward revenge movie. Uh, a man on a mission to take down the people that did him wrong. Only this is India style. So really not much more to be said about it plot wise that I can think. Is there anything you would elaborate on, Lewis?
I will mention the inclusion of the monkey god, Hanuman. The movie starts with the mother reading a story of Hanuman who thought he saw a bright mango and reached for it, and it was the sun, and the other gods were upset and banished him to earth. And in some ways, when Dev Patel is in character fighting in an arena, a small arena, in the, I don't know, it's kind of like MMA, I suppose, more than wrestling or boxing. Uh, Monkey Man, who is the ring alter ego of the kid, as Dev Patel's character is called. Um, Monkey Man kind of alludes to that, the Hanuman connection. And then later, there are a few other uh, references to Hindu mythology throughout the film, but it's not a dominant theme in the movie, but it gives it a little cachet of being from South Asia.
Well, I think I'm going to say where that's concerned. That to me from the trailer was a bit of a selling point about, oh, what's going on with this mythological background and Hanuman, the monkey god, and manifest on Earth. I was actually, to me, I just felt like it didn't really, it was just almost extraneous. Like, okay, yeah, you could maybe say there's some kind of parallel or interconnectedness, but it's it's very vague. It's really not like um, it's not like you're watching a mythological film, a film with any kind of real genre, fantasy characteristic, particularly. It's still the story itself is it's just a bone crunching action revenge film. There's just not much else going on.
Well, I found out that Hanuman is a forest god. And so, in some ways, it alludes a little bit to the origin story of why he wants revenge. And of course, we also have a Hanuman puppet show, if you want to call it that. And the mom, when she's trying to protect her son, says something like, "You are my Hanuman," and when she sends him away during a crisis. And I agree with you; it's not a major theme of this film, but
Mhm.
um, still, even when he's um, in another place, they talk about that tree and its roots. And so maybe that's more of a philosophical twist. But I don't want to get too hung up on this. You know, I agree in one way with what you're saying is that I was hoping, and I don't think I can really fairly judge a movie for what it isn't or what I wanted it to be. But I honestly thought there would be a supernatural element to this movie, and there's none,
Okay.
at all. And I was hoping in some ways when he went into costume that maybe like mask, that the mask of the monkey man in the ring had some kind of magical powers. But no, it's all just humans. But I will say they abide by the law that the rules of physics and anatomy and physiology do not apply in any fight sequence.
So, let's say a little more when it comes to the fight sequences. Um, I guess for myself, I mean, of course, by nature of what this is, the fight sequences tend to be a bit over the top, but they definitely, I read in advance that Dev Patel said he was looking to make the violence much more visceral in this film than it is in a standard action film. I mean, maybe that's not an exact quote, but certainly that was my experience of it, that he succeeded. I mean, it's really not just total. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's there's a somewhat disturbing quality to it really does feel um, very like you can feel the weight of the world on the people in this movie. It's absolutely showing the um, grimiest view of India uh, that I've seen on film and the limited Bollywood that I've seen. Is certainly one point I keep making about this one is it was missing the song and dance number. But in addition to that, it was very much um, just showing at the bottom rung of Indian society just how downtrodden everything uh, can feel from a certain perspective.
I think that the fight scenes were well choreographed. Um, I thought some of them went on a bit too long, especially when they were mano a mano between two primary characters. Um, and but I will say that the final act of the movie, regardless of how you divide this movie up into acts, but the final act was one of the most kick-ass things I'd ever seen. It was incredible, and the variety of it was unique, and I that really, if other aspects of the movie had been better, that would make me give this a higher rating that I'm going to give
Uh-huh.
it.
So what are some of the things that you think it didn't do so well then? Like what's preventing
Well,
you from giving it a
I
higher
thought
rating?
I thought that the training scene seemed interminable to me. Um, I did see a featurette where Dev said, he was trying to do an homage to movies like Rocky, but I wasn't particularly interested in those training scenes either in the movie. I think they're filler. And I mean, doing it to the beat of an Indian drum doesn't make it any better. Um, perhaps that's unique, but it just went on and on and on to me. And I wondered if it would ever end. And and he was already doing pretty well fighting before that, the super training montage. And I thought, really? I mean, we have to see all this. And it just brought the energy of the movie down because we had a previous act where there was a lot of action going on. And then, for various reasons, Dev has to flee and is unconscious and gets rescued and ends up somewhere else. And then the flow of the movie just slows. And in fact, then there's a scene that I didn't particularly care for either, where he's under the effect of a hallucinogen. And I thought, this is the second movie in a row I've seen where I could have dropped acid during that scene. and watched it. Not that I ever have dropped acid, but what I've heard of it. It seemed like that would have enhanced the experience in that and in Godzilla X Kong. And it just seemed unnecessary to do all that. I would have preferred a more straightforward, continuous action arc.
I guess for myself, where I stand on the movie, I know you said you can't judge the movie for what it's not, or for what you wanted it to be. On the other hand, I don't see how I can rate the film other than from my own feelings about it. And I thought that the heaviness of it, the hard-hitting violence of it, the poverty, the sheer sense of humanity being ground down, I thought if it's going to have all that, that there should be some point that it's making, and it didn't seem like it was really making a clear statement or message. It was showing it, but it didn't really seem to be having a clear reason to show it. And then as far as the actual just action itself, it was very by the numbers. We already alluded to John Wick, and it really just was like, you know, John Wick, but with like some real heavy-handedness around it, rather than sort of the fun of what I've seen of the John Wick movies. So in the end, I came away from this film feeling like I could take it or leave it. I didn't think there was anything special about it. It was a weird mixture of some feel bad to where it seems like it should be making a point, but then it never quite does. And then the action itself is just your stock action film. So I didn't I didn't dislike it. I think it's well done. I think there are some extremely well choreographed action scenes. The stuff with Hanuman seems cool to the extent that they have it in there, but again, I don't really get where they're going with it. It seems like it doesn't really bring anything unique to life. It's really just a Hollywood action film at the end of the day.
Well, in many ways, it almost is reductionist in the sense that we essentially become, as a viewing audience for this film, the people who are watching the wrestling match or the MMA match between Monkey Man and his opponent, because that's what the movie comes down to. And if there is a point, I would say it's probably, um, here's a person who's standing up to injustice and the pain that was caused him in life, and he's getting, as we said many times, revenge. But the problem is, the characters are almost all archetypal. They're not really people. We don't really get to know them. And if you don't get to invest in somebody as a character, then they're like a cardboard cutout doing something. And that was how I felt. I mean, I didn't even know until I saw the credits that Dev Patel's character was called the Kid. And what does that say? If it's that confusing. He's this nameless entity. He calls himself Bobby in the restaurant from some cleaner that's sitting there. But there were some troubling aspects like that. It seemed to me maybe a personal, since he directed it and wrote it and stars in it. It almost seems like an ego project, that may have been well intentioned, but just was not executed that well. And it was his directorial debut as well. So maybe, he'll get better as time goes by. But again, it all comes down to script. If you don't have a good story with good characters, the movie's going to fail.
So when all is said and done, what would your summary be, and what rating would you give this?
Well, I think I would have to give it really somewhere along the lines of a two out of five because it had some great action, but that's about the only good thing you could say. And it was intriguing. I won't deny that. And certainly, I'd not seen a lot of that culture, the aspects of the culture, but that's not enough, for me to give it a good rating.
Uh-huh. I think I'm gonna be I rate it slightly higher, just in that I do think if you're somebody that isn't so concerned about plot, isn't so concerned about seeing something really different, and just wants straightforward, hard pounding action, violence, not all that concerned about anything else, you may get something out of this. And I guess for myself, as you said, that there were definitely scenes where it was just like, wow, okay, I, that that definitely got things pumping. Plus, it is a unique setting. You don't really see films coming out of India that aren't Bollywood films that much. That really was trying to do a Western view of um, ac the grime and action um, setting in an Indian city. Although even that is left somewhat vague as to where they are. Um, but I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I to me, 3 out of 5 is it, it, it's it's not a waste of your time if you go see it. Um, and if you never see it, you haven't really missed anything.
Well, yeah, three is about average.
Yeah,
So your assessment seems reasonable to me. I mean, for me, I could never see it and it would be okay. But I'm glad I watched it and learned something, about. Although technically, of course, it's filmed in Indonesia, so I don't know how much of real India we saw in it, but there were probably some aspects. And certainly, Hanuman is part of Hindu mythology. So, um, but anyway, I
okay.
think those are our thoughts.
So thank you for watching Slice of Sci-Fi.
Bye.